the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A state of control.
This is A State of Control, episode 15. The Kid, an Espresso, and a Puppy. This is State of Control, your monthly look at control and automation for the world of audiovisual. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. With us, as always, Steve Greenblatt, Control Concepts, Mogul, and Grand Poobah. How are you, sir?
Great. How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah. Steve jokes. We spent an awful lot of time together this year. The most recent was at the Commercial Integrator CI Summit in Orlando. Very good time was had by all there. So
Yes, it was.
if you're interested in that, you can actually.
Much of the AVNation team.
There's a bunch of us. Yeah, there was a ton of us. Mostly on the commercial side. There's also, it was co-located with CE Pros Summit as well. So next year is in August in DC if you want to apply for that. So good stuff. Somebody I haven't seen since CEDIA though is Mr. Rich Fregosa from Fregosa Design. How are you, sir?
Good. Well, what is it? Mellow West Coast greetings.
Mellow West Coast greetings. Rich is still on hangover mode from the Giants winning the World Series.
Still having a blast.
There you go.
I've been waited. I waited 40 years for the first one, and now my little guy just thinks we have a parade every year.
Well, yes,
Just,
not every year, every other year.
That's all right. Exactly.
All right.
3 even.
Let's go up the West Coast, if we can, to Beaverton, Oregon, the home of Biamp, and Kylie Henner. Kylie has the best title in the world, the Director of Customer Experience. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How you doing there?
Doing fine. You have some nice Biamp product, some Biamp processors behind you there. So if you're watching the video, you can see that.
Got the rack O gear.
The rack gear and some fine Middle Atlantic racks as well. I see.
That's right. Absolutely.
And last but not least, Dominic Accurso is the Integrated Partner Manager for Crestron. How are you, sir?
How are you guys? Good afternoon.
Good. All right, so let's talk about this. In the world of programming and automation, and I will preface this podcast and this show by saying this. This is going to be primarily geared towards programmers, right? Not that the rest of ours aren't, but there are some topics we've covered that kind of span, manufacturers and end users, stuff like who owns the code and best practices and stuff. We're talking to programmers on this one because we're talking about modules, right? We're talking about those little things that make your life better, or you curse whoever made the module, one of the two. I was joking with Dominic off the air that I was cursing him yesterday as I was trying to pull in a Clear One module. No offense, Kylie, I didn't design it. I'm just programming it. So
I'm keeping my mouth shut.
I was actually cursing it and cursing the person who designed it because I would much rather have been pulling in.
Pick up the phone and call Michael, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would have much rather been programming a Biamp one. But these are the little things, right? The things that make our lives easier. Let's not mince words here, but Kylie, you guys make some really good stuff, some complicated things, and yes, you could provide all of us wonderful programmers, people who are smarter than me, the codes, the command codes for every single thing that I want to do, right? Except to do that would be, oh my goodness, incredibly difficult for some folks. And then, so you guys partner with Crestron, you partner with third-party programmers to write these little modules, right? That lets me just, throw something at it and it volumes up and volumes down and gives me feedback, and it's a groovy thing. So actually, Kylie, we'll start with you on this. How important are these little modules when it comes to manufacturers, the people who are trying to get things controlled from a control automation program?
Well, I think from my perspective, we're seeing the integration industry under increasing pressure to get in and out of jobs as quickly as possible. So from a manufacturer standpoint, it's really to our advantage to provide some modules that make it easier for the integrator. Because like I said, they're trying to get in and out of jobs as quickly as possible. So any tools or tricks or anything we can do to help make their job easier makes our product more appealing to them. So while I won't say that a manufacturer necessarily has an obligation to create or provide modules, it's certainly in BIAM's best interest for us to make them available to our dealers.
Okay. Then Dominic, from your guys' standpoint, from Crestron's standpoint, from the manufacturer of these control systems, how important are these? Like Kylie said, you where you're trying to get in and out of jobs under budget a lot of times, or really at budget.
Extremely important. I mean, that's kind of the core of my department and the guys that work on the team with us is making sure that we provide these control modules in a timely fashion, but also for the most important projects and products. So BIAM's a perfect example. We worked with actually Steve and his team. They produced the most recent BIAM module, which was the Tessera, and that's one of our most downloaded modules to date. A lot of the codec systems as well. So those things are something that are heavily relied upon on our dealer base, and so it's very important that we have these devices up and available to the dealers.
Okay. Rich, from a programmer standpoint and from programming, how much should we rely on the modules? Because there are some modules that, Dominic mentioned the fact that Steve made the latest one, the Tessera one. How much should we rely on these? Not very much. Rich's mic went bye-bye.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. There we go.
Rich is at a loss for words. I don't know.
I've known the man for 3.5 years. I've never known him to have a loss of words.
Exactly. I think I just self-edited myself so I didn't get in trouble with my first answer.
Well, there you go. It was
Smart man.
That was self-editing. I think that the modules in and of themselves are great tools. I think that used in the wrong hands is kind of like handing a toddler an espresso and a puppy, and setting them loose. Part of it is being able to deploy it and being able to use it as a stepping off point. When a module is written, a module is intended to bring together every function in a device. Basically a manufacturer and whoever's partnering with them is saying, okay, here are all of the things that our device can do. So we have to account for all of these because we have no idea necessarily how the dealer is going to use it. They may use 10% of the module, they may use 50% of the module, or 100% of the module. So you are creating a module kind of for the lowest common denominator initially, which is here's everything you have. And then it becomes a matter of deployment. Well, if the installing dealer or the programmer that's coming in doesn't necessarily know the product, you're flying a bit blind. So I think that you use them with discretion. You understand the tools that you're using, and then you push them out. Now, are they a huge time savings in terms of being able to get up and running and figure out if something's not talking right out of the gate with their provided module? You've got something that you can very quickly troubleshoot. But again, like anything else, it's about efficiency. And it's about using the right tool for the job. So, we use them, absolutely. But we also spend a bit of time answering the why questions about how something works as opposed to just pushing it out there and hoping for the best.
Yeah, and there are some instances. I mentioned I was kind of joking about the program I was writing yesterday. There was a there's a module we're using some NEC monitors. And yes, could have used the module, but all I'm doing is powering on and powering off, right? I don't care about feedback. I don't care about anything else like that. Then I can take the code and knock a power on, power off feature. So that's no big deal. Steve, from two standpoints, right? You not only program these things, but you also write the modules itself. Describe that process. Do you does BIAMP come to you and say, Steve, we think you're great. Can you write this module for us, and then walk us through that step?
Sure. Well, it all stems from the fact that you take a complex API and then you need to take that make it into something that is in a bite-sized piece that a programmer can manage and understand. And modules provide benefit for programmers of all different types and sizes. For certainly the more novice side of the programmer, the more important I think a module would be. But for experienced programmers, if you have a good module, it increases your efficiency and your capability, and just like Kylie said earlier, the importance of being able to keep a project done on time and within budget. I think the modules help to leverage that. But the approach that we take is that we look to partner with manufacturers and help them to develop modules across many different control platforms. I mean, we certainly want to focus on Crestron, but we also do AMX and some of the other control platforms on the residential side. And what we can offer for them is a complete solution that makes their product presented in a consistent manner across all of these different platforms. And then when they also have a resource in us to be able to help to solve problems for their customers, and we also look to grow with them to be able to continue to support the product as the product evolves. And for us, everything is relationship based, but that's I think where what the value that we try to bring and where the selling point is in this type of a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Dominic, these modules take, let's take BIAMP because Kylie's on the phone here.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all of these capabilities, right? And
Right.
different modules have different things. And in BIAMP's case, you have several different modules depending on what you're trying to do.
Yep.
For a display, you're probably going to have one module, right? Let's talk about the BIAMP or the displays.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to shoot it some information, right? You're going to give it a press, a button press, and with that, you're going to do this and this and this. You're going to pull the information, whether that's volume control or whatever, or volume level. And it takes something that's inherently incredibly complex and simplifies it, right?
Right.
Does that kind of devalue the programmer? Does that make them, less important? Or does that, open up the case for less experienced people who may not, you should be doing things like this? Or does that, just enhance our own capabilities?
I don't think it devalues. In most cases, when you're, let's say, turning on a display, no matter whose display, on and off, that's not the only thing you're doing in the room, right? You're probably setting a scene. You're probably turning on a VTC system. You're turning on maybe, some light settings, maybe having shades come down. So you're doing other things in that environment which would require the programmer. So it doesn't really devalue the programmer. It just enables him to kind of get to that point quicker and faster and on to the next job. So like Kylie was saying earlier, especially in today's day and age, systems are getting more and more complex, but the requirements and the needs from the customers are also growing, and the expectation of, why isn't this done yet is always looming, So I think things like this enable them. One of the other things I would like to add is we've been doing Crestron Connected for about 5 years now, maybe 5.5, 6 years, and that's on the display side of things, it's very heavy. So we're doing projectors and flat panels mostly, and that's really working with the manufacturers of these products to enable our firmware on the device. So it ships basically with that connected firmware on the device. So when you plug it into a Crestron system, it raises a flags, NEC display or whoever says, hey, I'm a Crestron device, and we have native communication to that device without the need for a module. But with other devices that are more complex, like the BIAMP Tessera or some of the other codec systems, a module is absolutely necessary.
Well, and real quickly, just in case someone's never heard of a Crestron Connected,
Sure.
What does that mean?
So it started, like I said, about 5 or 6.5 years ago when we were working with TI, and they were developing the DLP chip for projectors. And what we did is we worked with them and the manufacturers at the manufacturer level to implement our control firmware and protocols into low-cost projectors. It was originally focused on the K through 12 markets. So low-cost projectors, $800 price point, and you'd be able to go and deploy these in, say, a classroom or multiple classrooms on a network, and you'd have control right from your laptop. A teacher can come in and plug in and log into a URL and basically turn on, let's say, a BenQ or NEC projector, right from their laptop. Basic controllability. If it was on a larger network, which RoomView, which is now called Fusion, you'd be able to monitor, manage, and control that entire network of projectors. You can see the lamp life, you can see if they're on, if they're off, what input they were on, and have total visibility to what was going on in the environment. And so we have that today, and it's gone beyond DLP. Now we're doing flat panels, LCD projectors. We've even done some AV receivers and even door locks. So it's a program that's kind of grown expansively, and I think we're going to continue to grow it. But I still think at the very core, to go back to the original conversation, modules are absolutely necessary. But this is just one more tool, even in a programmer's belt, to help them make things a little easier and make them a little more fluid in terms of deploying a system.
Okay, absolutely. Is there a list, by the way, not to dive into this, but is there a list on the website? Because I didn't realize the locks.
Yes,
okay.
There's if you go to the Crestron website, the quickest and easiest way to find it is type in Crestron Connected in the little search bar. It's one of the first options that comes up, and then you can look by product type or even manufacturer type. Okay. And we have a full listing of models and brands.
Very good. All right, Kylie, from you guys, just from BiAmp standpoint, as a manufacturer, somebody that's trying to get something controlled, how much time is spent, do you think, trying to develop these, and also in your training when you're training people on how to program your stuff? Because is it something that you take in your classes and in your training, something you delve into, or is it something that you just kind of leave for the manufacturer side to talk with?
We do cover our control protocol, not so much the modules, but we go over the control protocol. I mean, we spend the Tessera class is a 3-day training, and we spend maybe an hour and a half going over the control protocol, the basics of the syntax and the basic commands and how that functions, and let our students get hands-on by manually typing these commands into a terminal emulator and seeing how they work. We do make mention that the modules are available from both Crestron and AMX, and kind of highlight that they are there for the for those that want to use them. But honestly, I mean, BiAmp is we're not control system programmers at BiAmp, so we're not intimately familiar with the ins and outs of a Crestron or AMX or other control system. We do have a few people on board who have kind of taken that on as a sort of side project, but no one at BiAmp is a full-blown experienced control system programmer. So we're not really in a position to speak really intelligently about all of the ins and outs of the modules and how they function. I mean, we certainly can talk about them at a high level, but if it comes down to serious debugging about what's going on in the module, that's not necessarily BiAmp's job. I mean, we will help out as much as we reasonably can. But at some point, the control system programmer needs to take some responsibility with debugging what's going on with the control system. I mean, and it's a give and take. I mean, we're going to help them as much as we reasonably can. But once again, we don't manufacture the control system. We don't program the control system. So our ability to support it is limited to some extent.
Well, that actually raises a good point. Steve, we'll start with you because I have on many occasions emailed Steve or called Steve and said, "Hey, I know you wrote this module. What's wrong with it?" Who should we call? I mean, if you're either in the field or you're sitting at your desk and you've got some time to crank this out before you go on site, and you do run into an issue, do they call you? I mean, because here's the thing: I only knew this because I know which ones you've written, but do they call BiAmp? Do they call Crestron or AMX? Where do they start?
Typically, the conversation starts with Crestron, from what I understand, but we certainly make it known, and Crestron knows too, that because part of this arrangement is we need to have that Crestron partnership, and we speak with Dominic and his team often, and they give us feedback on what they hear, and typically when a call comes in to technical support, if it gets past tier 1, usually the tier 2 people will reach out to us if it's something that's a more of a complex issue that they either need us to support them, support the client, or BIAMP contacts us as well in some cases. If something gets escalated, because the products are complex and very configurable, you have to take the time to really narrow down where the issue lies, and it could be something that is a module issue, or it could just be a module versus configuration of the device compatibility that we just have to smooth out, but because of the relationships that are in place, we make ourselves available to whomever has that question, and when we understand how the protocol goes to elevate an issue.
Okay, Rich, from your standpoint, and from let's use you as the token programmer. How much should we use these? I mean, you said before, and I mentioned the fact that there are times when, yes, there's a module available, but all you're really doing is kind of, power on, power off. But a little bit more intricate things or a little bit more complex things, that's when I'll use a module. But from your standpoint, how often should we, how much should we lean on these things?
I mean, the first time that you're ever dealing with the object itself. I mean, so many times, when you're working with a new device, because again, every year there's going to be an upgrade, or there's going to be a new model, or there's going to be, a new technology coming out. There's things that change in terms of how these devices communicate. So our first rule is always, hey, let's make use of the tools that the manufacturers have gone, to the trouble to provide it for, the initial reason. If you get this brand new unit and we throw it on our test bench, that's the first thing we do is we load up the module just to make sure, hey, is this working the way that we anticipate it to work, without deploying it into a production system first. And at that point, it's important to know what the devices that you're controlling, what they do and how they react, and how they're potentially going to be integrated into the, a larger sum of the parts. And then at that point, depending on the skill level of the programmers involved, then you can decide, okay, do I use that as a jump-off point, like you were just talking about? I really just want to turn this thing on and off. Well, rather than spending all of the time trying to figure out what on and off means, you already have a template that you can work with. You're not having to completely reinvent the wheel and go through the API and find each part of the communication protocol. And oh my gosh, you missed a tilde here or a colon here, and now this thing's not responding. And 4 hours later, you find out that you made a typo. I mean, that's some general real world stuff that happens to people. Is that it keeps your mistakes at a minimum, so that at the very least, when you're commissioning a system, you can say, yes, this works, this isn't communicating properly, and it provides everybody the opportunity to very quickly diagnose a problem. Because, say you're a programmer, you're on-site or you're off-site, and you've got an integrator involved, you've got a facilities person involved, and you've got IT involved. And so you have all of these different people who are part of this team. And, when something goes wrong, everybody blames the other person. The programmer's saying it's hardware, and the integrator's saying it's the programming, and both are saying, well, it's that piece of equipment, and IT's in the background going, you guys are all idiots. So, we just use it as a way to be able to establish the minimum benchmark, and then be able to go from there. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, make use of the tools that you got. Why spend all of your time inefficiently if there's something there, and then if you want to modify it or scale it down or build on it, or again, if you can trigger something coming in off of an incoming phone call, that you can go ahead and trigger the lights or raise the shades or lower the shades or change the lighting to a video conference setting as opposed to an audio conference setting, yeah, absolutely use it. But again, like I was saying, is that know the tool that you're using at that point. Always the minute that you grab the module for a device, the second thing that you should be doing is downloading the manual for the device.
Amen, brother.
I mean, Richard made a good point about the sort of minimum threshold, and I think certainly with BIAMP's products and the flexible, configurable nature, that minimum threshold's pretty high. So for a a programmer to come into, programming a control system for a BIAMP to Sierra blind, if someone just handed them the protocol document and said, go make this Crestron work and have it up and going by tomorrow morning, that's going to be a pretty tall task. I mean, it's going to take, at least a day or so to read through that protocol document and really kind of grasp everything. As I was saying earlier, people don't have the time for that anymore. They're under a lot of pressure to, turn around these jobs. So if the module gives them a shortcut to get to that sort of that minimum operating level, then that's, then it's serving its purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's kind of take an interesting or a side glance at this, because this is something that I've personally ran into. What happens if the module doesn't do everything, right? I'm not going to call out any codecs specifically, but that's actually where I tend to run into it, our codecs, where good and well that they'll give me, incoming call, status, but the module doesn't have it, or it doesn't have something, doesn't have a way for me to reject the call, even though I know good and well that the IR does. Steve, we'll start with you on this one. What at that point do you do? Do you just start searching around for the command protocols, or do you, something where you call up the codec manufacturer and said, hey, dude, your module doesn't do this?
Well, I think you bring up a good point, and I think that one thing to point out is when you have a module that's what we would call certified by the control manufacturer, typically they try to include all the functions that you need. But versus if you have something that's kind of written in a rogue manner that you might download off of, the Yahoo group or something like that, that might just be a subset of the controls that were just needed for a particular project. So,
which we can neither confirm nor deny that group exists.
Are you saying that there's a group on Yahoo about control people?
There's one thing
He's
just
not
to
even
point out.
comment.
Where are you getting this module from? But the to answer the question directly, and when you do need another feature or function or command, what we personally do is you have to then rely on the API. And I think one thing that to point out, and it's something even with a programmer that's learning, modules are a great tool, but you have to make sure that, to Rich's point earlier, that you have to understand them, and you have to be able to troubleshoot them, and you have to be able to interpret the API as well, because otherwise, if you rely on a module and the module isn't working for one reason or another, you can't just throw your hands in the air.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I agree.
What we do, I was going to say, what we do inevitably is, add to augment the module, let's call it, with those additional, 5% of the commands that you might need.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to kind of reinforce what Steve just said there. I mean, a control system programmer needs to know how to do more than simply plug in a module. They need to know how to program from scratch based off the published protocol document. They're both tools. They're both skill sets that they need to have. I mean, I think it's, I think certainly for BIAMS products and the flexible nature of them, I think it's unreasonable to expect the module is going to do everything for every project that's out there. The module is going to establish, kind of this entry level point. But there's each job is unique, and there's the crazy requirements that come up from time to time, and a control programmer needs to know how to tackle those manually. Mm-hmm. And if they can't, I mean that's kind of a bigger discussion. But that's my opinion on this situation.
Go ahead,
Dominic.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I actually tend to agree. So with these complex devices like the codecs, the BIAMP devices, and these very flexible, configurable devices, we frequently will get additional requests for features that may not be in the API or just not in the module. And like Kylie said, the and Rich, and Steve said as well, the module is written for 95% of what the device can do. That other 5% we may have left out. When we try to release these devices and these modules, we want to hit, the broad swath of the programmers that are looking to control a device. But with devices like the Tessera, they're extremely configurable. there may be things that are not in there, and in which case the programmer may need to add them himself on the fly.
Right. Go ahead, Rich.
Well, I was about to add to this as well. And again, like I said, we're speaking to programmers or dealers, whoever. Generally speaking, these modules are created in a controlled environment. A controlled environment is not a production environment necessarily. So I keep coming back to, know what you're doing with it. And again, let's also be honest. I mean, we're still human. These are still people who are writing this code. Mistakes are going to happen from time to time. There's stuff that, say you've got a codec, or you've got an AV receiver, or you've got a security interface panel. There's quite a bit that's going behind there. And everybody shoots for 100% accuracy. Mm-hmm. But, I've been a beta tester and an alpha tester, or even in production environments where we've deployed something and went, this is broke. And it just so happened that, this was, of the 95% that got QC'd, this fell within that, 2% that maybe didn't get QC'd because they don't have that set up necessarily in their environment, that winds up getting pushed out into a production environment. Or maybe it didn't account for latency or noise or chatter on a network, or something that winds up using the same port. Or there's a variety of things that can happen once you hit into a production environment, which, again, as long as you use the module as a starting point to be able to get a better understanding of what it is that you're doing. And also keep in mind that, potentially the people who were brought in, not necessarily Steve, but again, anybody who's brought in it, some of the manufacturers would use their staff, their developers, to write the module. Well, maybe they're not as versed in Crestron or AMX as they are in their own API. Their API is maybe built for a web interface and it's been ported over to talk to a control device. So, in much the same way that, as an integration programmer, we're having to learn all the nuances of somebody else's API. Sometimes these manufacturer modules that are being generated, they're trying to figure out the nuances of the control system. So there's an assumption based on one that doesn't follow through in another. Then once it gets deployed, it goes out. So buyer beware in that respect. Make sure that when you're pushing it through, that you have the capability and also an understanding. Because again, obviously they're doing it for you, so you don't have to do the necessarily all of the grunt work. But be prepared to also put in your fair share of work. That's the biggest thing that I think the message that I tend to push to the integrators, which is, hey, again, this is a service that's being provided for you as a courtesy to the dealer to support you, but do not look that as a reason for you to shirk your responsibility in doing your due diligence professionally. Yeah,
absolutely. This also comes down to best practices, where I try to encourage the dealers that I work with, or the integrators that I work with. Let's mock this thing up in your warehouse before we hit the client's site, right? You're going to find an awful lot of evils in the warehouse, and it's a lot easier to fix there than it is, as you're trying to reach somebody at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
That's a big thing too, and a lot of the modules come in a package that have a test program that has been deployed, so that you should be able to load this in and get the basics communicating. It helps to test wiring and communication and setup and so forth. So it's having that ability to mock up and work with the device ahead of time really could provide a lot of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dominic, you guys made I guess about a year ago, you introduced the marketplace for modules. So if I'm an integrator, I'm a programmer, and I'm trying to find some weird, I don't know. I'm not even going to pick on any one manufacturer, but I've got a product that I would love to have a module for, and it's just not there, whether that's a specific model number of somebody's or what have you. How do I go about doing that?
So we did launch that the application market, and the thought behind that, it came actually from a dealer conference that some of our guys had with a group of integrators about 2.5 years ago, and we decided that the site inherently in the old days was just Crestron modules, and we said there's a lot more out there than just Crestron modules, and so we decided let's open this application market, and that will allow for not only modules but graphics packages, themes, things of that nature, and then basically create a community, right? I know that there's the Yahoo groups that are used by a lot of the guys today. But we decided let's do something a little more, restaurant centric, and that we would kind of sign off on. And so we decided to launch the application market, and that would allow guys like Steve and Rich to basically submit modules that they've developed for their own projects or even for the customers directly right onto the application market. And if they decided to, they can charge for them, but in most cases offer them at no charge. And it's really just to kind of grow the community. A lot of guys initially, a lot of the CSPs, the restaurant service providers, initially had mixed feelings. They got mixed reviews. Some guys really didn't like it at all. They felt it opened it up to some other programmers that may not be up to snuff. Other guys saw it as a good thing, as an opportunity. And I think it's a kind of a mixed bag, right? And we won't just take any old module and throw it up on the site, but we will have some basic restrictions. But we want to also keep it open and say, if you develop this module for this device that maybe we haven't yet developed a module for, then by all means, why not put it up? We even put a rating system up there. You can kind of rate it, 1 to 4 stars, and say, I like it or I hate it, and give a little comment about it. And then kind of just, in hopes of growing the overall community and letting guys kind of trade modules and input their products and their feedback onto this market. And so far it's been fairly successful. And we've put a lot of third-party modules on, and we still continue to develop our modules internally and put those on as well.
2 questions for you real quick, and then we'll get off of
Sure.
the marketplace. Do you test them? And is there a way to see, which ones are the Crestron official made ones and the ones that are made by someone else?
So we review them. We do not test them with the hardware in-house.
Okay.
There's just too many variables and there's too many products for us to test every module that comes into us. We obviously do test the ones that we do develop, and so the ones that are Crestron developed are actually developed by Crestron. It will say so on that page. If it was developed by a third party, it'll say the name of the manufacturer, have a direct link to their website and their customer support and so on. So the kind of the written rule in the service agreement, or the agreement with the developer who basically submits these modules, is that you write it, you support it, kind of concept, right? So if they wrote a module and there's a bug for it, then we look to them to help fix this bug. Otherwise, we're going to pull it off the site. In the event that they are no longer in business, we would like to get that source code, because if it's a popular module, we want to keep it on the site. We want to keep it up and available for the customers, and we can kind of take it over from there and then modify it as needed, or update it or fix it. But for Crestron modules, it's still the same process. We get the hardware physically in-house. We set it up. Like Rich said, it is a controlled environment. We try to make it as real of an environment as possible. With the time frame that we're given, it's not always 100% possible, but we realize with the large products like the codecs and the Tessera and so forth, it's a living, breathing module. We're constantly updating. There's constantly new firmware. There's constantly new commands or new requests for commands. So they're always being updated on a fairly regular basis. And so that's something we always try to let everybody know, is that we don't just write a module for especially these larger pieces and just leave it. They're always being updated on a fairly regular basis.
Okay. Kylie, I'm going to pick on you because you're our token manufacturer. Not that Biamp has done this. All right, this is actually what I'm going to talk about is the tendency for manufacturers to switch around their command their command strings, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times, most of the time, you'll find this in displays, right? Whether it's projectors or actually flat panels. What? And if you don't know, just say, it doesn't make sense to me either. Why would you do that? Why would you, let's say that you've got a module for, one brand's, X line of projectors, and they come out with a new Y line of projector, and suddenly, power on is now power off, or what have you. Mm-hmm. Why change around the command strings?
Well, I can't answer specifically why other companies might do it. I mean, I can certainly say, our older DSP product, Audia, has a different command structure than Tessera. They are similar, but they are different. And I can answer that. The reason they're different is really because those two products are different from the bottom up. I mean, they use different components, different design, different operating systems, all of that. So they really are different products. And while we tried to take things that we liked in Audia and that people liked and apply those to Tessera, some of that just wasn't possible because the two products really are different architectures underneath the hood. And also we felt like we learned some things from Audia and had some ideas of how maybe we could make some things better. So while I can't speak for other manufacturers, I mean, I know that's sort of, I know why Biamp has different command structures between its, our two major DSP lines. And really the reason is because they are two different products from the ground up.
Okay, and that makes sense to me. Display manufacturers, that makes no sense to me. Just freaking power on is power on. I don't care what the.
Yeah, I think, I think manufacturers, it's in their best interest to make this stuff as easy as possible for the integrators and the control system programmers. I firmly believe that. The integration industry is one where the integrators are under a lot of pressure. And so as a manufacturer, we want our products to be as easy to integrate as possible. And therefore, we shouldn't be changing our command structure around willy-nilly, and we shouldn't be adding features that aren't documented and all of that stuff. We want to make this easy, and that's certainly core to Biamp's philosophy. Absolutely.
Can I tell you one of the manufacturers that I love to program for it, and Dominic, you may want to put earmuffs on for this. But it's Extron, right? Extron has had the same freaking command structure for, 15, 20 years that I'm aware of. And it's simple, right? It's not a 25 character long command to volume up or volume down. It's 4 or 5 maybe, and it's very, and they haven't changed it either, So, all right, Rich, as we wrap up here, what's something that you wish either the control manufacturer or the manufacturer of the products, you wish that they would know and feel your pain on when it comes to dealing with these modules?
Ooh, the biggest thing is that it's the message we keep hearing is that we're playing together. My feeling is that you need to be dog fooding the entire time. You need to have each other's equipment. You need to be running each other's equipment, whether you're setting it up in your conference rooms, whether you're setting it up in your different lab areas, whether you're sending it with these programmers home, in some of the residential markets. I really think that a big part that gets lost sometimes is that we don't always consider the production environments that these are going into, because we're isolated. We are constantly sitting in our own office, and we have our own viewpoint and kind of the glasses that we look through of how this system should be working. And sometimes we forget how normal people or normal companies use it. And it's a danger that we all fall into, is that the age-old question of not could we do it, but should we do it? And focusing on, like we were just talking about, which is, here is the simple module, like you were just talking about. Here's on-off X, Y, and Z. Here's the advanced module. Maybe one supplants the other, maybe one works with the other. I'm a big believer in providing the tools, the diagnostic tools that should come with a device, which we say that you can do this with a terminal. Okay, well, great. On your site, why don't you go ahead and list all of the things that here are the proven tools that we've used. This is how we made it work when we put it together. And to be able to help the dealers out. Again, as you become a more accomplished and kind of road-weary control systems programmer, you wind up having this secret bag of tricks that you accumulate. I've got stuff that, over 20-something odd years that, I've still got. I've got little software tools that are 15 years old that are still part of my bag of tricks, because I know if I have a problem communicating to device, I can whip this thing out and find out very quickly where that problem's coming from. And so that's really where I see it, is that, where's we talk about cooperation, but we don't necessarily produce the items that instill cooperation, because again, we're all separate companies, we're all these individual entities. And so, what are some of the tools? And that's where we've had some real good success with some of our integration partners. Is, okay, great. Here's the tech support number for this, or here's a hotline for this, for the module. contact this email address. Not necessarily a person, because it might be a group, but if you are going to go down that line, here is a process that you can follow, even just on their webpage in a FAQ. Having a problem with this, click on this link, and at least it brings up that section of the webpage, or the right extension to call, or the right email address for support at ... And it's the little things, because typically, nobody ever stresses out when a module goes well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's how are you planning for your worst case scenarios and putting things in place for when something goes wrong to streamline the process, so that at 2:00 on a Friday, which again, you shouldn't be loading new code on a Friday, but just in case somebody is.
Oh, I'm going to this Friday, just so you know. I got a building going up that they've been 2 months behind schedule. I am definitely loading several rooms on Friday.
I hope
go ahead.
The AV gods are with you.
Yes, you and me both.
That's it. No code, no load Friday.
Yeah. And I may have even been doing it on Saturday, but that's a whole other story.
But yeah, I think I think that some manufacturers do a better job than others of here's a module, Anno Domini Rock Me Amadeus, go with God my son, and so I would for me it's always the tools. Is that I'm not asking you to spoon feed me the information, but at least give me one place that I can go to get the information.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. As we wrap up, Kylie and Dominic, keep your phones on, because both of them have Crestron and Tessera products. So, guys, that's going to do it for this month. Dominic Accurso, integrated partner module manager for the manager for the integrated partner program for Crestron. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
How can people find you and/or Crestron?
They can email us at partners@crestron.com. And that goes to myself and a couple of guys in the department as well. So that's anything module related. And so we have a couple of guys on the background that do the actual development. I manage the group.
Wow, I never knew that email existed. Partners@crestron.com. There we go.
Yep.
All right. Kylie Henner, Director of Customer Experience, the greatest title in the world from BiAmp. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And how can people get a hold of you?
Support at biamp.com reaches BiAmp's global tech support department. I'm part of that list. I don't do the support anymore, but I oversee that team, so that's the best way to reach anyone at BiAmp for any kind of technical questions or help.
All right, very good. Mr. Rich Fregosa Design, thank you, sir.
My pleasure, always good. And I think I kept the velvet gloves on this time.
You did. You were very nice.
Obviously, where is it?
Right there.
Blink. Yes.
At Fregosa,
on the Twitters.
At R Fregosa.
At R Fregosa. Type my name into the Googles, and all kinds of stuff pops up these days. So that's kind of fun. CE Pro, CEPro.com. Find me on Facebook, on Google Plus. Twitter tends to be the good one. Yes, we've just reached 1,000 followers.
Very cool.
That was pretty cool.
Good for you,
pretty
dude.
cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I have 3. So, and I'm related to 2 of them.
It's 3 more than I have.
There you go. There you go. And Mr. Greenblatt from Control Concepts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's been great as usual. You can reach my company, Control Concepts, at controlconcepts.net, and I'm on a bunch of social networks at Steve Greenblatt, and do a little bit of writing for Commercial Integrator and the AVNation blog. Check that out.
Yeah. Steve started writing for us too, and Rich, you always have a place, and if Julie doesn't like a piece, so
duly noted.
Duly noted. Don't follow me or my Twitter, but go to the website if you would please, avnation.tv. avnation.tv. Something kind of cool that we started about a week ago is a Kickstarter program. Here's the thing. We're trying to get to Integrated Systems Europe, ISE 2015. Typically for Infocom or CEDIA or something like that, it's in the U.S. and a lot of our guys are already going and gals are already going anyway, so we can kind of mitigate our costs. ISE is different. None of us typically go to that. And apparently a flight from Amsterdam or from St. Louis to Amsterdam, I have to mortgage my house for. So we're doing a Kickstarter program. We're about halfway there. So if you get a chance, check it out if you would please. If you go to Kickstarter, type in AVNation, or if you go to our website, there's a blog post about it, and it'll take you there. So if you check that out, we would appreciate it. If you can't give anything, if you could just send it along to somebody else, that would be lovely as well. So, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. This has been A State of Control.